Good afternoon. My name is Marc Moncion. I'm the Vice President of Safety, Compliance, and Regulatory Affairs at BigRoad and Fleet Complete. With me is Maria DeMarco. She is the Marketing Manager for North America at BigRoad, who has joined me for this Facebook Live Q&A. This is the first time we've offered such a Facebook Q&A production, so everybody, welcome to everything you want to know about trucking during an emergency declaration, but we're afraid to ask. On a personal note, my daughter, my son, and his girlfriend are all frontline healthcare workers, and I'm sure you can appreciate there's a certain level of anxiety knowing that they are at a heightened risk of their health concerns, and it's always in my mind, but I commend them. It's their noble effort. This is what they want to do, and I can't help thinking about them on an everyday basis. That got me thinking about frontline workers that are integral to safety. Doctors, nurses, paramedics, police, fire, ambulance. They all play an integral role in the health and safety of the public, and they're always being acknowledged. So now I then move on to the trucking industry. I also come from this industry. I've been surrounded by truckers. I have family members in trucking, many close friends. I think about the role they play, but they're not always so quickly acknowledged, unfortunately. Truckers are road knights. They are hands down the backbone of the supply chain when it comes to ensuring goods and services are kept moving to protect us all from this outbreak. Well, I want to personally thank you for your efforts, your bravery, and everything you're doing to help us out. Without you, everything would grind to a halt and chaos would likely ensue. Like many of you listening on this call, I've also been glued on the TV. I've been watching the news that is unfolding. I'm also well connected to social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. So if you want to invite me, send me an invite, it'd be my pleasure. On another note, it really breaks my heart. I've been reading a lot of stories. Truckers who are going to pick up and deliver freight in response to this outbreak, they're not always welcomed by their shippers and receivers in the warehouse. They're asked to wait to get their freight unloaded. The shipper receiver will come to your truck, make you sign the bill and the manifest. I get all this social distancing stuff. It's for the greater good. But come on, at least let them use restrooms. They can't just drive tractor trailers and park them on the streets to find a restroom. If you don't let them use their facilities, well, guess what? When nature calls, they'll go wherever they have to go. I've also read stories in certain states where they have shut down rest areas. Again, I get all of this social distancing. It's all for the greater good. But truckers are minimum to take some time off. They need a minimum of half an hour off to take an hour at the 8th hour. They need to take 10 hours off once they reach the 11th and the 14th hour. Some over-the-road drivers have to use their sleeper berth. They break their intervals into 2 sleeper berth patterns, one session of 8 hours, another session of 2 hours. Still others have to take a 34-hour reset to restart their cycles. These rest stops in transit are the lifeline for truckers, not only to comply with the regulations, but more importantly, to get the rest they need. Preventing truckers from finding a safe place to sleep in their trucks and use restroom facilities only makes their job that much more challenging. And why? Truckers bring everything, all the goods and services we need to continue to survive. I understand there are several major trade associations, the American Trucking Association, and others that are lobbying these state organizations to get these rest areas reopened. So hopefully they get them reopened very soon. I also get, truckers have to stop at reasonable locations at truck stops. This has also been impacted by the stories with COVID. These rest areas have had to limit interaction. Again, I get it. We still need to provide these facilities for our truckers. I also have been reading a lot about, unfortunately, some insurance companies are not providing medical coverage when they're in a foreign country. I understand there's risks associated with providing insurance coverage, but on the flip side, these same insurance companies have been supporting you through their premiums for years, so give them a break. Not getting proper medical coverage is just another major challenge that truckers are up to, that they have to overcome to deliver freight to us. Give them a break. They deserve it. You've also recently heard that non-essential services between Canada and the U.S. have been restricted and that the borders have been closed. Well, thankfully, this does not apply to truckers. On the same note, truck drivers who are foreign workers who need to cross the border will still be allowed to return to Canada. These same truckers will continue to be exempt under the 14-day quarantine and will be allowed to seamlessly cross the border. The last I've heard, and you've probably seen it in the news media, there's been a national expansion on the emergency declaration to hours of service. Essentially, the number and type of goods that are exempt have been increased to include, like the main ones being fuel, in order to fuel the truck stops, the paper products. If you've done any shopping, you've seen the shelves are barren. Well, there's been an exemption including with paper products, at a high level, medical supplies necessary for sanitation, paper products, as I said. There's some raw products, as I mentioned, even alcohol is included for your hand dispensers, equipment supplies for people designated by the state or the federal government. But we'll talk a little bit more about that in detail when we get to the Q&A. I also want to make a small contribution. If you haven't seen already, I wrote 2 blogs. They're posted on BigRoad and also our Fleet Complete site. These 2 blogs were written for the express purpose to help you out. There's a lot of material out there. There's a lot of misinformation. I wanted to provide you with all the information you need, and I've also put together a Q&A, and I'm going to highlight some of these during our live session. Maria will then challenge your questions over to me. Now just remember, I've worked in the industry for over 30 years, so I'll know mainly many of the questions asked of me. But that being said, don't forget, this is like Saturday Night Live here. This is filmed in front of a live studio audience. So with that in mind, I'm asking you to keep your questions specific to COVID. But if you do have any other general questions, you can always ping me, Fleet Complete or BigRoad. You just have to click on the Ask the Expert button, and it would be my pleasure to answer those questions. So I get the same thing, from the homepage at BigRoad. You just have to follow the same steps. And so let's kick it off. The first question, whether the exemption applies to me or not. Well, if you look at the blog, you'll see you have to be providing immediate assistance to the industry. So those are the essential supplies. If you're moving goods that are not part of essential supplies as part of the direct relief, you will not be exempt. There will be some occasions where you may have some mixed loads, some loads where are included in the emergency and some that are not included in the emergency. Those will unfortunately not qualify unless there's a change in policy from the federal government. In terms of what's exempt, well, you have to look at items that are not included as part of the direct relief effort. In terms of where, I got another question where the exemptions apply. This is a federal undertaking, but if you're doing interprovincial movement of goods, you are traveling within certain states, you will still be covered by the exemption under hours of service, provided you are meeting the requirements. I have a question about documentation. There's no real specific documentation that you need to surrender. Which you of course want to have is the motor carrier. You want to have your bill of lading, your manifest, and it will describe on that document what it is you're transporting. So if ever stopped at roadside or at a way station, then of course you'll want to show your manifest to confirm that you are in fact covered. Now, there's going to be some discretionary interpretation by safety officials. I'm a former DOT inspector. Like in these times of troubling times, you're going to see, hopefully, officers are going to use some common sense and some discretion in terms of what you're carrying. Like really one of the big ones is food for emergency restocking of stores. Like that could be like pretty well any type of consumer product available. So the other point, I've got some questions, you want to know what's exempt and what is not exempt. Well, there's some regulations in 49 CFR that you must continue to comply with. Those are the controlled substances and alcohol use and testing under Part 382, commercial driver's license requirements, minimum levels of financial responsibility. The hazmat requirements are also in place and are not exempt. You have other things in terms of license plates, taxes. If you're moving over dimensional cargo, even if it's for the express purpose of this providing relief, you still need to get an over-dimensional permit. In terms of, I get this quite a bit, how do I log my hours? Now, of course, if you are meeting the requirements and you are deploying a BigRoad solution, then clearly you just have to engage on the solution. You just go through the settings and you apply emergency conditions, and you will not be managed in terms of the hours of service. But I'm going to strongly recommend that you continue using your BigRoad ELD throughout the emergency. You want to keep track of your records. You don't know when you're going to be moving goods that are exempt and when you're moving goods that are not exempt. And you've heard of the term Murphy's Law. If you're going to get stopped at roadside by DOT, it's likely going to happen when you're conducting a non-exempt move. So please keep on using the BigRoad ELD. Annotate the exemptions when the exemptions apply. When they don't apply, then of course keep on entering all your record of duty status changes and make sure it's all accurate for that purpose. Getting questions really about the truck inspection stations. They remain open throughout the state, throughout Canada. You know, if this exemption still applies to you, you're still a commercial motor vehicle, so you still must meet the requirements of entering the weigh station when the lights are flashing to enter. Please don't bypass the scale, as an officer can and will chase you down and bring you back. In terms of returning empty, now there are some requirements there that you may return empty to your carrier's terminal, to where you report to at the end of the day. And again, you'd be exempt under Part 395 or Part 390 through to Part 399 actually. But you should inform your motor carrier. If you're exempt, you're probably working some long hours, so listen to your body. You know, if you're tired, pull over, find a safe location. Hopefully you've got a location where you have a rest stop, where you have a location with a lot of room. You can use your sleeper berth, get some rest, find a place to get a nice hot meal. That's very important. And if you need to take time off, just inform your motor carrier. You really want to always document, annotate. Your carrier hopefully will be understanding. If you need to rest, jump in the sleeper berth. You know, it's in 2 sleeper berth sessions. You could do the long sleep of 8 hours, the short rest of 2 hours, giving you the 10 hours. Or you can go ahead and just book off a straight 10 hours, and then your work shift starts entirely new. The one thing is, once you get back to your principal place of business, your terminal, if your motor carrier deploys you to another function that is outside the requirements of direct assistance for COVID, you're back in full requirements under Part 390 through to Part 399. So make sure that you're documenting everything. In terms of whether or not the declaration applies to you, I think I touched upon it. It's if you're providing direct assistance. I talked a little bit about rest areas. You know, it was disconcerting to me when I saw the Pennsylvania DOT shut some of these rest areas down. I understand there's been a lot of lobbying efforts done by the American Trucking Association, other stakeholder organizations, implying to the government to review this policy. Now, we understand this not mingling and keeping your distance, but these rest areas need to reopen, as simple as that. So stay tuned for that. The same thing for dine-in restaurants. I've put a link on the blog I wrote about every single jurisdiction, every single state. It describes what are some of the restrictions by state. So if you want to go on the BigRoad site, you can see clearly what these locations are. So there's a whole bunch of them. They all have different requirements, different needs, different timelines where they're open and closed. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure our goal is to help you find a nice, safe place to rest, to get a hot meal, to be able to take a nice shower, and to get back on your trip fully alert and ready to continue. So in terms of fatigue management, you know, I'm getting questions about that as well. When you're outside the exemption, you're free and clear, but you really want to listen to your body. Like, if you're tired, stop. You know, it's not time to run 24 hours, stay steady, you know. Try to keep the same patterns as you normally would take. We don't know. We've got some questions about the declaration, you know, whether it's going to end. At this point, it's till April 12th, 2020 at midnight. We don't know if it'll be extended, if it'll stop. You know, stay tuned, because I'm going to keep on writing blogs. I'm going to keep on putting material readily available to you. as I get the news, I'm going to post it. In terms of extensions, if I was a guessing man, I tend to believe that this extension will likely take place until things settle down. But up until that time, just keep on running safe and just keep on doing your best. And we really appreciate everything you've done to help all of the society to make sure we're fed and we've got all the goods we need to survive. So I'm just going to open this up. If you have any questions, any further comments, anything you'd like to add to me, would be my pleasure. Otherwise, kind of touched upon what this is all about. For those of you that are BigRoad users, you'll notice on the first blog I wrote, it's actually an interactive tool, how you want to manage during the emergency driving conditions. You essentially go on the settings and you click emergency. You have to provide a valid reason for the emergency, and you'll see that the clocks will stop running. And yeah, so that's essentially everything that I have to say for today. I don't know if, unless you have any further questions or comments of me, Maria, anything you'd like to add?
No, I think we are available, obviously, to the audience. So as they need us, we'll be live again. So they can follow us on Facebook, and we'll be doing some webinars coming up as well.
Thank you very much for your time, folks. Have a wonderful day.